you ready? I'm Vin.
I'm Sori.
This is Genesis. The name of this song is Jesus, He Knows Me.
Mm-hmm. For the big homie Matt. What's up?
For the big homie Matt. Mateo. For tiny topical political commentary, you can hit us up in Middle America with Vin and Sori. There are multiple ways to get your song reviewed, dear listener. My favorite is the community option. $1 to gets you in at Patreon, where you, dear listener, will be able to join an alliance. You put your points together, and that determines what song we do. Or you can do the Ronin option or the Filthy Capitalist option. $125 gets you straight to the head of the line. Is that what the big homie Mateo did? Okay, well, there you are, dear listener. You do that 3 times, you get pushed down a $75 rate. Having said that, this is Genesis. The name of the band is Genesis. The name of the song is Jesus, He Knows Me, He Does. Let's go.
Here we go.
It's the official video.
I'm guessing so.
Very 80s.
On the TV screen, coming at you every Sunday. See the face on the billboard. Well, that man is me. On the cover of the magazine, there's no question why I'm smiling. You buy a piece of paradise, you buy a piece of me. I'll get you everything you wanted. I'll get you everything you need. You don't need to believe in hereafter. Just believe in me. Jesus, He knows me, and He knows I'm right. I've been talking to Jesus all my life. Oh, yes, He knows me, and He knows I'm right. And He's been telling me everything is alright. I believe in the family, with my ever-loving wife beside me. But she don't know about my girlfriend or the man I met last night. Do you believe in God? 'Cause that is the war I'm selling. And if you wanna get to heaven, I'll see you right. You won't even have to leave your house or get out of your chair. You don't even have to touch that dial, 'cause I'm everywhere. And Jesus, He knows me, and He knows I'm right. I've been talking to Jesus all my life. Oh, yes, He knows me, and He knows I'm right. Well, He's been telling me everything's gonna be alright.
A little bass slide. I'm getting good at hearing that stuff.
Won't find me practicing what I'm preaching. Won't find me making no sacrifice. But I can get you a pocket full of miracles. If you promise to be good, try to be nice. God will take good care of you. Which is to do as I say, don't do as I do.
before?
No.
Did you know what the song was going to be about?
I assumed, because it was Genesis is not a Christian band, so I assumed it was going to be something against. But see, I don't really view this song as being against Christianity. So my relationship to the song is actually pretty complex.
Okay.
Because, so you get guys like Kenneth Copeland. They got the private jet. They're flying around doing all this craziness. And I'm like, or there was a recent thing I heard about Olstein's church, and I generally don't pick on Olstein. But something happened where he got Joel Osteen. Yeah, they got $4.4 million in PPP loans for the pandemic. Right? So it's like for these small businesses, you get these PPP
Why would
loans.
they give them to him so much?
Well, they look at your salary, right? So like they look at how much you're paying out in salary. So everybody has a P&L.
Yeah.
So the accountant, I don't know how they do this because we didn't apply for one during the whole COVID thing because it's just us two. But that's the reason the gym stayed open. Remember I talked about the gym? It's a payment protection plan is what it's called, PPP. And so that was one of the ways that like more small businesses didn't go belly up because you were still able to pay your.
But is it like insurance where you have to have it before something bad happens?
No, it was an emergency relief thing.
For anybody that had a small business?
Yeah.
And why didn't we do it?
Well, because there's only two of us, and we didn't feel any negative effects for COVID, so I didn't apply for it.
Do you think that church felt negative effect?
Well, that's the point. Is Olstein, that's the controversy, right? So it's like he's a mega rich dude.
Please, if I would have known that, I would have signed up for it. And then we've got plenty of people on our channel that could have used that.
Yeah. I mean, sure. I wasn't thinking about it like that. I was just thinking about it on principle, like you don't want to profit off of, whatever, right? But yeah, I hear what you're saying. But anyway, so Olstein's church received like $4.4 million.
This is a lot of money.
Well, I mean, he's got a massive organization.
Yeah.
So I'm not.
But okay, this is what I'm
sure.
surprised
I'm not
about.
sure like how wrong that was. Like, if he's employing like 20,000 people.
But you're nonprofit. So if you're nonprofit and you don't have to pay taxes, why should our taxes go to pay you?
Well, it's not paying him. He's fine. It's.
You get what I'm saying?
Well, here's my question. If you were the wife of one of those guys that was employed, would you not take the money?
No, I would take the money. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I don't understand why, if you're a nonprofit and you don't pay taxes year after year after year, then why our tax money is going to make these programs available to people. I don't think that should be available to.
Well, the idea behind nonprofits,
especially their church, makes so much money. I don't know if they.
The idea behind nonprofits is they're doing something to contribute to the public good. So the entire reason you tax people supposedly is there's a community chest that goes into fixing the road, the fire department, yada yada. But if you have a side group or parallel group that is targeting a specific issue, like let's say a drug counselor or something like that, then there's a mutual agreement where the state says, oh, okay, well you're providing a public good, so the majority of those funds are going toward the public good, so then you've already done your part, so to tax you would be to double ding you. That's the concept of nonprofit.
Yeah.
Okay, so if your organization metastasizes to be so massive that you're still providing a public good, but now you've got people that are under your employ, then why should they not get support for that due to the COVID situation?
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you look at taxes that way, yeah.
If that's, and this is why I say like my relationship to this song is complex, because and I don't know what the number is, but for me, if there's any religious organization or, because we were part of and like a lot of people don't understand how those codes work. We didn't even have to go 501c3. We were on directly with the IRS, and they just said, you don't have to report anything. Like, we didn't even have to sign up as a 501c3 in the first place. So we never did. We were never 501c3. A lot of people don't understand that. Like, we never were. And that's why at the end of the year, we never sent off those things that they usually send off at churches when, you do your little tax write-off thingamajiggy. So anyway, there's a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff in churches people don't realize. But, obviously our operation was extremely lean, and God bless him, the pastor, spent the majority of the capital. Yeah. Like, he was spending the majority of his capital to keep the thing afloat. But
he had a lot of kids too.
That's the exception and not the rule, right?
No, yeah.
So
absolutely.
In my mind, it's like, if the IRS was to look at the church funds, and if there's like anything below like 58% of the funds are going to public good, then they should be taxed. That's my opinion. So like, if you had,
that makes sense.
You know what I'm saying? Because you have to do upkeep. You have to upkeep the building. You have to do this and that.
Kind of like,
you have to.
Like when you go for your taxes and you're like, you could just do like basically off your income, or you could itemize it.
Right.
It would be the same thing. It could be like, you can pay your taxes, or you can itemize it and show us that you've given more than what your taxes would be, in which case you can be tax free.
Right. I don't believe that every church should be completely tax exempt. And I think if we rescinded the tax exempt status of a lot of churches,
my gosh. Baby's so late.
Then that would purify a lot of motivations for why people are doing what they're doing. Mm-hmm. But if you're a bad actor and you start figuring out, holy moly, if I get in this job, I'm tax free. I've got this, whatever. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, what do they call that thing? The house that they give the pastor and his wife out. The parish,
parsonage.
Parsonage, yeah. Although with the parsonage, it's kind of risky, right? Because if you lose the pastor or whatever, then you're out of the house. You don't own the house; the church owns the house. So there's a lot. So like.
No, but you could be setting aside your money for when you are not.
I think the private jet stuff and things like that are excessive. Or when you look at a guy like Joel Osteen, the vast majority of his personal income, people are like, oh my God, he's made millions. Well, he's written a lot of bestsellers. Mm-hmm. And it's very hard to I've got a friend who's kind of quasi-famous or whatever, and it's very hard to write a bestseller. And it's very hard for the bestseller to stay that. So like, Best Life Now and all that, that's his work. He did that. Mm-hmm. I've got like 9, I had a publisher contact me, and she was really going after me for a couple weeks. Because I told her, like, blah, 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 I got this idea, yada, yada, yada. It's just a TPN lady. And she was going, I got her on my phone still. She was going after me for a couple weeks, like, yo, blah, 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 get us a manuscript. It's really, really hard to sit down and take the time and actually write all that stuff out and whatever. Like, the whole book, start to finish, is in my head. But when do I have the time to do it? You know what I'm saying? Right, so I'm like, so I look at Olsen, I go, okay, the guy's a multimillionaire, but the vast majority of that income is money that he wrote on the side. So should he not have access to money that he created? Like,
no, I think he should.
But the minute you hear this guy's a millionaire, then immediately people go crazy. Mm-hmm. And I'm not one of those people. I've got this friend and I love her to death, but she's killing me. I can't stand those posts when people say, so-and-so has $1 billion. He could write everybody a $3,000 check and still be richer than all of us before the pandemic. I hate posts like that. It's like, it is not the responsibility of billionaires to take care of everybody. Mm-hmm. All of us have a little bit more than somebody else, so we need to take that responsibility. Like...
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of awkward for any American to say such a thing.
It makes me so angry anytime I see that. Yeah. Like, because it's so lazy, and it's like, oh, that's great. Let's demonize the billionaire, right? And so now we don't have a responsibility to the people around us. Yeah. But,
like, you don't scroll past those posts that talk about the starving children.
So it's
are you giving your income for that?
It's hard. It's not a simplistic thing to me. Like, it's easy to pile on people like Joel Osteen and things. And like someone like Kenneth Copeland, for example. The guy's got a private jet. And then when he got confronted over the private jet, he looked like a straight up demon. I mean, here you go. You remember that clip with him?
I don't remember it.
Kenneth Copeland.
No, but I'm sure it's going to be entertaining. Pull it up.
I don't know. It didn't. You don't remember this? she rolled up on him.
Ask you about why you don't want to fly commercial. Why have you said that you won't fly commercial? You said that it's like getting into a tube with a bunch of demons. Why do you think that?
No, listen to me just a second. Not the people.
Look at his eyes.
The main reason is because of the need. If I flew commercial, I'd have to stop 65% of what I'm doing. That's really the main.
Why?
Isn't it true that you want to fly commercial so that you can fly in luxury? How much money did you pay for Tyler Perry's Gulfstream jet, for example?
Well, for example, that's really none of your business. My wife thinks Inside Edition is, oh yeah. Now, thank you, Lord. Help me. Just let me pray.
So that's obvious, right? Jesus doesn't need you to have a private Gulfstream jet to preach the gospel. I mean, the Apostle Paul had his 2 feet and a boat.
Yeah.
A plane. He would have been like, what? You can get from Damascus to freaking Syria. Syria, Damascus. You can get from Damascus to Jerusalem in the same day? You know what I mean? So that one is like completely obvious. You're getting all these donations, and the vast majority of Kenneth Copeland's capital has come from TBN, being on TV, getting those donations, yada yada yada, and he's gotten rich off of the gospel. I mean, he just has. I mean, that's a fact. I think that's different from a guy like Joel Osteen, who's basically an evangelical Tony Robbins, self-help type of thing. He's a self-help guy, and that's how he's made his capital. Nobody looks at Tony Robbins and says, "Okay, you're a crook because you like attaching." This is kind of like this is funny, but this is a little bit of like the Marxist stuff where it's like, if you're poor, you're righteous, and if you're rich, you're automatically evil. Like that's that type of thinking. Yeah. And so people but there was, I think I was talking to Zoe about this. There was Lydia. She was a seller of purple. That means in that context, she was rich. So you had this rich Christian woman. Well, what did she do with it? She opened up her house and had the Christians in the area. She used her capital for the benefit of the people around her, right? Whereas guys like this use people around them for the benefit of their capital.
Oh my gosh.
So I think we have to be careful of the minute we see a quote-unquote rich preacher, now all of a sudden he's a bad guy, right? I don't think it's that simple. But I do think there are very obvious, Jim Baker, this guy, very obvious people. The worst one I saw, where they'll say like, don't pay your rent, if you really had faith, you would send me the money. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, oh, well, if and they're like, you have to understand the principles, like if and so there's all these poor, literally poor women who give out the money, and they're taking their last rent check or their last, electric bill check, and they're sending it to fuel this guy's plane. Like, Jesus said, such people will be punished most severely. Like, people make the mistake that God, like, all sins are equal in God's sight. That's not true. That's a giant myth. I honestly don't know where that came from. But that's not true. Jesus said that the people who devour widows' houses, he said, such people will be punished most severely. And
it's not just the, like send it in, don't pay your rent.
Right.
But when they trick them and they tell them like, if you're looking for a certain type of healing,
right.
To me it's another version.
Oh, your son has cancer.
Yeah.
If you really had faith, send us a...
if you... Well, no, it's like they called... sometimes they call it like a seed. Like you take this financial gift and you give it to the organization, and then healings and blessings are going to come to your family.
Right.
Stuff like that. And it kind of reminds me of when, the Catholic Church was the whole indulgences. And so you think your loved one is in purgatory suffering for... So if you give this money, then it's going to take them out of their 500 years sooner or whatever. Like, how could you not give your money for that?
Right.
If your kid is stuck in bed with cancer, like, how could you not give if it's actually going to bring about the healing?
If you were truly convinced that sending that last rent or mortgage whatever, or even like mortgaging your house, if you truly believe that that would save your son, I don't care if you're a Christian, I don't care what you are, anybody would do that.
Yeah, and you know what's sick about it?
Anybody would do
There's got to be people that had put their money forward for that, thinking that that was going to bring about the healing, and then their child dies, and now they don't even have the money to pay for the funeral or the hospital bills, and like that. Oh, that kind of grimy.
Yeah, evil as hell, bro. You know, and it's crazy because the context of Jesus saying people who do that to widows are going to be punished most severely, the cause was upkeeping the temple, which was something that was actually something good. But the religious people had taken it way too far and were completely merciless with how they were handling the money, and would not adjust it for the sake of poor people. And so now the building became more important than the people. And just for that, Jesus said, you're going to get punished most severely. They didn't even have the audacity in Jesus' day to pull the bullshit that some of these people are doing. So it's like, it's absolute madness. It's crazy. And to some degree, like, I always, like, go back and forth, like, because we had a conversation about this, like, a year ago. How could you fall for something like that if you're reading your Bible? But at the same time, it's like, when you're in a desperate, like if God forbid anything happen to any of our kids, like you become irrational and you're in a very vulnerable situation, especially if you're a single mom. It's horrific stuff.
Well, I think that when you live in a society that is, you know, basically our society is pushed forward through capitalism.
Right.
And so if there's something that you want,
right,
you put your money and you get it. It really doesn't matter what you want. And you can get as slimy as you want and get anything, right?
Or anyone.
So, right. So then when you're in that type of situation and you kind of have that mindset from the time that you were a child, then it's like,
it's true.
Well, maybe God's the same way. Maybe we can put some money forward and we'll give it to the church. Let's give it to the church. And then, you know, it makes sense how that could happen to somebody. But holy moly, that's really, really sick.
Yeah, it's pretty evil. It's funny, too, because he was talking about, like, I won't tell you about my girlfriend or the man I met last night.
Yeah.
You always see these things where, like, the guys who are, like, the most, like, anti-LGBT, the most hateful to our LGBT, like, they're the absolute, like, they catch him. I forgot the guy's name, and I'm it's probably God's grace that I forgot the guy's name, but he was a big-time mega church guy. Like, he was in the top 3. And he was talking about the whole, and I understand, like, the whole gay marriage, like, I get it. I mean, my personal opinion is that the state and the church, that's one of those situations where there's, like, still some vestige of confluence between the state and the church as far as marriage goes. I think those should be separated, and then that would solve the problem, you know, and then, you know, for perpetuity. But, like, I don't believe a person who's really convicted that gay marriage is something that is not, you know, sustainable from a biblical perspective. I wouldn't call them hateful people. Like, I get it. But they're guys that just, like, take it over the top and go the extra and have no gay friends and have never had those hard conversations. Let me tell you something. Like, when you love LGBT people, your theology still has the same simplicity about it because the Bible's the same on the topic from Genesis to Revelation. But your presentation of it, and then your presentation of God's grace and things of that nature, gets augmented when you have people looking at you who love you, who are, you know what I'm saying? But what I can tell when a person has no gay friends whatsoever, and they're talking about it, and they just you know, you plug these people full of holes. Just,
I know.
You know, sodomite this, blah, 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 blah. They don't even know what a sodomite actually is from a biblical perspective, but that's a different discussion. And it's like, they go so crazy, and then 2 weeks later you find out this guy was a closet, you know, whatever his entire life, and he's buying, you know, 14-year-old boys on some strip in California somewhere, and he got caught. You know what I'm saying? Like, and again, you have to be nuanced. Like, not everybody who is saying that is anti-LGBT. I'm just saying, like, the people that just, like, go way over the top.
I know. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I was watching, and then, of course, I was watching, and there's no grace, no mercy whatsoever. I was looking at this thing, and Lecrae, Stacey Abrams is a black woman in Georgia. She's a Democrat, obviously. and she was fighting against voter suppression, like actual voter suppression, and she won. And she exposed voter suppression in Georgia in 2016.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, and people were like floating her name around for Joe Biden to have as a running mate, because after the George Floyd thing, he's like, I'm going to get an African American woman. So people are like, oh wow, Stacey Abrams would be perfect, and she would have been, right? And then there was this thing with Joe Biden and Stacey Abrams were live, and it looked like it was going to be the announcement of her being his running mate.
Oh, yes, I remember.
And like he completely embarrassed her because he had no interest in her whatsoever, because she was actually doing something for black people, whereas he wanted Kamala Harris for obvious reasons. That's another separate topic. But anyway, Lecrae is a Christian rapper who is now caught in between our current seats in Laban, because he got promoted to fame by white evangelicalism, because it was like, hey, there's this black rapper and he's a Christian rapper, and he was
good. Yeah.
Lecrae was really the first Christian like crossover guy who was like legitimately like a good rapper and whatever.
Yeah. Good presentation.
But then after a couple, Trayvon happened, Floyd happened, the Mike Brown situation. And Lecrae was talking about how all these white evangelicals who were encouraging him and all that, he was shocked at how they responded to the Trayvon situation, Philando Castile. Like, he was shocked. And of course, he had one of those, awakenings that he thought that he was like, so he started rapping about that. So he got excised from white evangelicalism. So here's how this relates to this song. So Lecrae says that Stacey Abrams is a role model for his daughter. So the guy puts, and he's like semi-famous in their sick little subculture. The guy puts, Lecrae has left the faith. And that means he's apostate. He's no longer a Christian. Why? Because he said Stacey Abrams is a role model for his daughter, the one that fought against voter suppression, black woman, and she's a larger woman, not very not a knockout, not a Beyonce, but her value was in her activism, and that's what he obviously, how I am with that stuff. Like, I want our daughters to be focused on what they do and what's inside of them, not whatever. And so Lecrae has left the faith. So somebody stupidly says, "Huh? What?" And they're like, he's supporting a woman who is pro-abortion and pro-LGBT. And so the person goes, so he didn't say he supports that part. He just said that she's a role model. No, he's left the faith. That's it. And it wasn't the abortion stuff they were all talking about in the thread. It was the LGBT stuff. So once again, like, being gay is like this crazy, and I'm like, I didn't even engage him. Because that's one of my New Year's resolutions is I'm not even going to engage stupid people like that. But it's hilarious to me because every time you bring up slavery to these people with the Puritans, because they're like, oh, the Puritans are great, you should model your life after the Puritans, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, these motherfuckers were slave traders. They would have gotten the death penalty, Exodus 21 says. Whoever steals a man, whoever is found in possession of him, or whoever stole him, both shall be executed. That's what the scripture says. So the type of slavery that Jonathan Edwards and those guys took part in would have gotten him the death penalty. It's mind-boggling to me. And then, of course, in the New Testament, in 1 Timothy, where Paul talks about the laws for the lawless.
Ugh, this whole conversation, it makes me so sick.
And then Paul talks about, it's written for the evil and the perverse.
Yeah.
And then it says for liars, those who strike their mother and father, arsenokoites, which means gay men. And then it says, and slave traders. So literally Paul puts slave traders and gay men on the same thing. Now, to my secular friends, like, holy shit, that's really offensive. But here's my point. My point is, they can look at one person in that verse. It's literally the same verse. They're literally stacked on top of each other, one after the other. They will look at the slave traders, like Jonathan Edwards and the rest of those guys, and say, well, they were people of their time. That's the excuse they give all the time. They're people of their time, which is bullshit. Spurgeon didn't believe in slave trading. John Brown didn't believe in slave. Like, there are lots of preachers that but you get a guy like Jonathan Edwards who literally preached sermons against abolitionists. And these people will hold a fucking conference dedicated to the Puritans. And then when you say, well, you know, they took part in the slave trade, they go, yeah, Pete's got feet of clay, God's gracious, he was a man of his time. But then you go to an LGBT person and go, hey, that LGBT person is really patient, really kind, really loving, very sweet. I'm thinking about a guy right now. I would like my son to be like that. Oh, he's gay, blah, blah, blah. And there's no like, well, they're a person of their time. Because you have to admit, if it's good for the slave trading goose, it ought to be good for the LGBT gander. And you have to admit that being gay is part of our time. So how comes the slave trader, that's okay, we're going to give him a pass, and we're going to say, well, he was nice to his Negroes, but the gay person, who was born that way most of the time, sorry, but that's just a fact. A lot of them were, not all of them, because again, we have to be nuanced. Fought against it. I mean, I've sat in offices and heard these people talk about killing themselves because they couldn't change them. No grace, no mercy for those people whatsoever. Nope. And on top of that, not only are we going to be ungracious, unmerciful, unkind to these gay people, if you say that there's anything redeemable about gay people, to the point where you would want your son or your daughter to emulate a certain characteristic of those gay people, that means you're not a Christian. Holy shit.
See, my issue with it, too, is that you've got, of all the time that I spent in church, which was a lot of time because I grew up in church, I heard conversation about gay people a lot. I mean, a decent amount, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I never once heard them speak anything about, you know, raping your wife in marriage or rape at all.
Yeah.
And that's like such a big thing. Like, there's so many people that have had that happen to them, and that conversation never came up. So you're gonna spend all your time talking about those gays and then not talk about that prevalent issue. And the thing is, like, at least, you know, if you're, let's say you're looking at, you know, two gay people and you're saying, okay, this is wrong, this is sinful, but at the same time, like, these two people, they might be in a monogamous relationship and completely in love, and like, to me, that situation, like, I get it. I get what the Bible says about that, but like, I think that the raping your wife or raping anybody is like much, like, so many times worse. And why are you not saying anything about that? Like, that's what makes me sick. Or like the pedophile being in church around the kids and nobody says anything to the parents about it. And they you know what I mean? Like, so you're gonna let that happen, but if somebody comes in that's, it just, I don't know. Just,
well, I'm laughing because we had a situation like that. Where
I'm talking about actual situations.
And this is, we're talking about actual, this is a dude who, it wasn't one of those things where he was like, he had just turned 19 and she was really, you know, 14, but she said she was 17. This was, he was fucking 28 and she was 11. Like, asleep. Asleep. Like, this is not, you know, and yeah, like, that guy was allowed to,
and
he was allowed, let me say it this way, he was allowed free access to those kids, and the parents were never told. And then they finally caught him back in the library with some little girl, and they basically shoved him out the back door and then just kept it moving. But God forbid you have. I'm not even going to go into the details because here's the thing. Here's the thing. We're Christians.
There were people that were willing to meet that guy away from the church. He didn't want to meet with those people.
Not from that church, but from our church. Right. He was originally trying to go to our church.
Right.
And I said, nah, bro, that can't happen because we don't have a space. It was a bar, so we don't have a space where we can dichotomize adults from kids. Mm-hmm. So you can't come to the main service. But what we can do for you is we will show up at your house.
Or meet you at a restaurant.
With a couple of your friends. Because those guys would coagulate together because they were, you know, they were outcasts of society and not even the street folks that hang out with them. Mm-hmm. But we'll meet with you. We'll do communion. We'll do everything. Mm-hmm. Nope. He wanted access to the kids. So you know, somebody basically almost put the screws to him, and so he, you know, whatever. But yeah, but my point is, like, I don't want to, like, go into a giant, you know, diss session on the church, because the church is our folks, and I believe that, you know, the bride is beautiful, as they say.
Well, we're not saying every church is like that. You were just talking about one church that was willing to meet with the guys separately.
No, not every church is like that,
yeah.
and not every church is afraid or hateful, whatever adjective you want to put towards gay people or whatever. But I mean, I'm sorry, man. Anytime I see somebody, like, really, like, going off on gay people, there's always that question in my mind, like, because statistically speaking, it is more likely that you've got porn addicted people, which MasterCard and Visa, you know, I saw a commercial on this, have now refused to be part of any of the finances for some of these very popular pornographic websites because of what we've been saying for years, which is, it is impossible to know who is being trafficked and who isn't.
There's so much exploitation
and
going
who
on
is underage and who isn't. And even Visa and MasterCard said, we're out. So statistically, it's way more likely that there are people in your constituency that are engaging in that shit than an LGBT person.
Absolutely.
But there's all this about these gay people. It's like, where is this coming from? It's strange. And if you look at the early church, you know, Chrysostom, Augustine, Tertullian, all these guys, they definitely talked about it. They weren't friendly about it, but they were not as obsessive about it as in the modern day American evangelical church. And it's crazy because these guys were having orgies in the street, like being gay, like wasn't even a thing. It wasn't even an orientation at the time, because sex was just, hey man, it's just whatever, go get in where you fit in type of situation. But my point is, they had way more material to go off on and they didn't do it to the degree that's happening here. So it's something weird about, you know, modern evangelicalism and the LGBT stuff. It's just, but anyway, I love the church. I love Christianity. I always will. And that's our folks, but you've got to be able to look at this stuff. And like I said, some of this has to be nuanced. Just because a preacher is rich doesn't necessarily mean he's doing the wrong thing.
We just have a problem when Christianity doesn't line up with the Bible. That's where we have the problem.
And I think a lot of people do.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's one of the biggest things I've learned from the channel is that, you know, we've been explicitly Christian, and yeah, you get a couple idiots here and there. Stop talking about your religion or blah, 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 or, you know, saying something blasphemous that they think is going to bother. But for the most part, people have accepted us, you know, as, okay, that's who they are, that's what they're about. Okay.
They'll say, like, look, I don't see it like you see it, but I still come for the interesting conversation, and they still like to see a perspective.
Right.
You know?
So what I've learned, you know, I was at a Behemoth concert and people were talking to us about God, and they were starting conversations, not us. And people would talk to us about God and things like that. Like, people do not hate Jesus and Christianity for the most part. I mean, some people do, but people hate, you know, people going after their friends and people doing that to, you know, women who have got kids with cancer and shit. People hate that shit. I don't know so much about them hating Jesus and Christianity. So the song was a little bit simplistic lyric wise. But I do think it's important, and it's you know, it's something that really needs to come from the Christian artists. You know, it should be coming from us, and we should be the most offended at these types of issues. But we're not. So, you know, you get it from the mouths of babes. So there you go. Aside from that, I like the song. I mean, it was released in '92.
Sounded churchy.
It definitely had that '80s vibe in it. But I love the '80s. You know, like, at some point, I want to incorporate some of that '80s feel or style, especially with the melody sections, into our music. Because I just love that sound.
You saw the people and the way they were dressed and moving, like it was so like perfectly done.
Yeah.
I was like, literally, there's nothing that they could have done differently.
It was corny
in this.
as hell, bro.
It was dead on.
It was corny. corny.
The kids, the parents, the swaying, the way they were standing diagonally, like everything was just
Where
the
you're standing
plants,
diagonally.
like right here.
Oh,
You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like sideways.
yeah.
The plants in the background, like the outfits,
colors, the pastel colors.
everything,
Yeah.
the flowers.
Yeah, that's a screenshot right there. That's a
It was
screenshot.
just, I don't know. I just thought that it was really, really well done in a mocking sort of accurate way.
Yeah.
The length of the skirts, everything is just funny to me. Anyway, what are you giving this song?
9.5. 9.5. It's a good song.
Probably. I'm gonna rate it a little bit higher because I think that they did a good job with what they were trying to accomplish. So 9.4 for me.
Okay. And Lecrae hasn't left the faith, you stupid motherfucker. All right. Then out.
Sorry, out.
Gone.